Greetings, everyone. This is Jeff Wilkerson, professor of physics at Luther College, bringing you the next in our series of what to look for in the night sky. It's the week of December 29th. We roll it into the new year during this week, so we're good. Midwinter sky is what we've got. Unfortunately, we've got quite a bit of moon interference. The moon starts the week 3/4 full, and on that first night, on the evening of the 29th, you go outside just as it gets dark. There's the moon. See if you can find Hamal above the moon. The moon will be washing it out a little bit. Use your binoculars if you need to. Hamal is the brightest star in Aries. And so this is a chance. If Aries, we've got a couple of constellations we're going to talk about this week that we don't always pay a lot of attention to. Aries is one of those that people who've casually watched the sky haven't always seen Aries. Heck, I don't see Aries very much. I don't pay that much attention to it. So there you go, about 6.5 degrees. Remember, a fist width at arm's length is about 10 degrees. So about 2/3 of a fist width at arm's length right above the moon that night will be the brightest star in Aries, Hamal. And so there's a chance for you to observe Aries this week. This is as darkness falls for me. It depends where you are in the world. I'm right smack in the middle of the United States. And so as it gets dark for me, the moon will be tracking this direction. So if you live in the western part of the United States, the moon will already have moved over to here by the time it gets dark. In the eastern part of the United States, it might be a little bit over there. So that's what we got. Hamal's a binary star, but only 5/100ths of an arc second between the primary and secondary star. That means you're not going to be able to observe it. You can observe this with the right kind of conditions and the right kind of professional instrumentation. It is possible to see those two stars, but it's a real challenge. So by the first and the second, the moon, night of the first and the morning of the second, the moon's just barely short of full. If you squint, you can tell it's not quite yet full. And it'll be passing Elnath. We talk about Elnath in the top of the V of Taurus, the end star there. The moon passes by there every month, and it'll be very near Elnath. Then by the evening of the third, into the morning of the fourth, we've got the moon sitting with Castor, Pollux, and Jupiter. In a bright moon week like this, Jupiter and Saturn, as we've been talking about all fall and winter, Jupiter and Saturn are well placed for observing, and they're just about as good as they're going to get as a pair to observe right now, and they hold up well. So you got your telescope, go out and enjoy the moons of Jupiter and the bands on the surface of Jupiter and the rings of Saturn, even though they're closed up tight still. Go out and enjoy that stuff. But on the evening of the third into the morning of the fourth, we've got the bright star Castor, the bright star Pollux. We've been looking at the last few weeks with Jupiter down below there. The moon will be right passing through there, and the moon will be just as full, about as full as it gets that night. So that's, you got a nice full moon headed in to the new year here, passing underneath Pollux, between Pollux and Jupiter. So be sure to enjoy that. Now, early in the week, the moon will set. The moon's far enough to the west and will set early enough that things that are rising as it gets dark or things that are rising just after dark are reasonably well placed, and you should be able to observe them in the morning. So wait until after midnight or so to go out and observe, and you got some things you can see. So one of the things we'll look at is the handle of the Big Dipper curves, and we like to say it arcs to the bright star Arcturus, the brightest star in Bootis. Bootis is a loop of stars. Looks kind of like a trash bag here, and there's a handle on the trash bag up this way. And Muphrid is one of the stars that's part of the handle of that trash bag. That's up this direction, about five degrees from Arcturus to Muphrid. After you've arced to Arcturus from the Big Dipper, then you head to Muphrid there, about another 10 degrees along that line, and you come to the bright globular cluster M53. So this is a big bright globular star cluster. Remember these globular star clusters, we've been looking at them some lately, 500,000 stars orbiting the center of our galaxy. So these are, this is a good globular star cluster to see. It sits right next to the brightest star in Coma Berenices. Again, a constellation we don't always pay a lot of attention to. So this is a chance to check out. Get your binoculars out, get your telescope, and see if you can see Alpha Comae in there. It's a 26-year period binary star as well, and it it varies. It has a highly eccentric orbit, so the two stars get really close to one another and they get far apart on the sky, so that they actually can be, during this time, right on top of one another to almost an arc second apart, but that's still going to be really challenging. Not as challenging as 5/100ths of an arc second by any stretch, but it's going to be really challenging for you, and you need good skies and really good optics to be able to do that, so it's probably not something you're going to check out. Now, there's a nice triangle here of Arcturus to M53 up to M3, another beautiful globular cluster. So you've got a globular star cluster M3 up this direction, and you've got this nice sort of close to an equilateral triangle, 15 degrees, 15 degrees, 15 degrees, not quite, but it's a nice triangle up that direction. Now, M53 and Alpha Comae right here, about a degree apart, and you go about a degree the other direction, and you've got another nice, beautiful globular star cluster, NGC 5053. All these things are worth checking out. They make their own triangle, more or less equilateral triangle, maybe not quite as equilateral as the other one, but more or less with this beautiful globular star cluster. So we've got 3 globular star clusters we're checking out in this region of the sky. This one, you can probably see, you got good dark skies. You can see M53 in your binoculars. I don't know if you can see NGC 5053 in binoculars, but you can try to look for this triangle, a nice wide field of view and a low power eyepiece. You know, you got a 40 millimeter eyepiece or something in your telescope, and you can start to get at least 2 of these 3 in there together. You might be able to get all 3 of them in there together, depending on what scope you have and what your field of view is. So now, if you take a line, if you draw a line 3 degrees west of NGC 5053 and then drop just barely south of that, you'll come across NGC 5172. It's a galaxy. This region of the sky is full of galaxies. And NGC 5172, you probably can see it with a 10 or 12-inch scope under reasonable skies. So you got good dark skies. Your 12-inch scope is going to pull that out. It's the brightest of a fairly large group of galaxies that contains at least NGC 5151, 5158, 5180, 5190, and 5217. Plus there's a couple of quasars in there. There's a couple of quasars very nearby. So this tight group, all within about a degree or 2 degrees of one another. So you can start taking pictures of this region of the sky. This is your photographic region of the sky. See if you can find NGC 5172, your challenge object. Go out, take a picture of it, and see what other galaxies you can start to pick out of this region. So you've got a bunch of nice galaxies in here to look for. Also, one more object for us to check out. So about 2 degrees southeast of Muphrid, back up to this star that's in the handle of the bag that is Bootis. About 2 degrees southeast is Tau Bootis, the binary star. I think it's about 1.3 arc seconds. There's a lot of confusion about which star in there is actually the binary component when you read about these things. But you see, you've got a 1.3 arc second binary there. It's a red dwarf star with a brighter main sequence star. So you've got a faint companion star and a brighter star. I think the faint companion stars maybe 8th magnitude. Versus 5th magnitude for the other star. And you see, this is a system that it's a relatively famous system. It has what's known as a hot Jupiter. It's got a gas giant Jupiter, big planet like Jupiter. So you'd think a gas giant planet, big heavy planet, in really close to one of these stars. And so this is a really, for people who model how planetary systems and star systems are formed, this is a real challenging system to say you've got 2 stars and a big planet, and that big planet is in really close to one of the stars. And so this is a class, these hot Jupiters are a class of planets where you have these big giant planets that are in really close, like we don't see in our solar system. So that's an interesting star to check out if you get a chance to hop up there, just to think about the planet that's in that system. And I think that's what we got for you this week. Jupiter and Saturn, the moon has a few nice interactions that help us find some other stars and some other things, but the moon's going to be pesky early in the morning after midnight. We should have, early in the week, we should have some good observing of quite a few globular clusters and a galaxy or 2. There's also a binary star or 2 out there. That's what we got for you. As always, thanks for watching, everybody, and we hope you have a great week ahead.